Today we will study ST 50.37 Pachanika Sutta, the discourse on the gainsayer, as 7.16. The theme here is being open to others. Now in this Samyutta chapter 7, we have a collection of suttas dealing with the Bharadwaja Brahmins. Each of them have a different character, so we see here how the Buddha deals with different kinds of people in different situations. And we also see here these members of the Bharadwaja clan. They seem to be ready whenever they listen to the Buddha's teaching. They're spiritually mature and they take refuge in the Buddha and the three jewels after listening to the Dhamma. So we see that pattern again in this teaching. This sutta is about someone who has the habit of contradicting other people just for the sake of contradicting. So this sounds quite familiar. We have people who like to say no and then contradict whatever we say and then come up with something else. So this kind of situation is common enough in the suttas. We have, for example, some teachers who claim to know certain secret knowledges or higher knowledges, and the Buddha often criticizes such attitudes. For example, in the Bhaya Bhairava Sutta, in section 21, the Buddha says, there are Brahmins, some recluses and Brahmins, who perceive night to be day and day to be night. Of these recluses and Brahmin, I say that they live in delusion. But I, Brahmin, perceive night as night and day as day. So here what the Buddha is saying is it's important to know what true reality is. On the other hand, there are also situations in meditation where, especially it is said that those who do dhyana meditation, for example, those who do the perception of light, and they do it at night, let's say. So when they meditate deeply in the night, so they see this bright light in their minds, and then when they open their eyes, they still see everything's very bright, although it is night. So for a while, they actually think it is daytime. So of course this will take some time, and they come out of it and they realize, okay, it's actually night. So these are situations where of course we have to be mindful when we meditate. So let's look at this story here, where this Brahmin, again here is given a nickname. He is called Pachanika Sutta, right? So let's see what sort of situation this is and how the Buddha deals with it, and what happens to the Brahmin. Page 161, the discourse on the gainsayer, as 7.16. Originating in Savatthi. Now at that time there lived in Savatthi a Brahmin named Pachanika Sutta, who delights in gainsaying. So his name, Pachanika Sutta, means who delights in contradicting others. Then it occurred to the Brahmin Pachanika Sutta, now let me approach the recluse Gautama, and whatever he says, I will contradict him. Now at that time the Blessed One was walking up and down. And so the Buddha was walking back and forth in the open, doing his walking meditations, his daily exercise. Then the Brahmin Pachanika Sutta approached the Blessed One and said to him, Speak Dharma, recluse. Right, so you notice here, we have quite an arrogant person. He doesn't address, he doesn't greet the Buddha. Just straight away says, speak Dharma, recluse. And this is what the Buddha says, only in 2 verses. The Buddha says, a word well spoken is not easy to be understood by one who takes pleasure in merely contradicting, by one with a corrupt mind, or by one so full of drive to outdo others. So here we see the Buddha using his mind-reading ability, immediately saying the right thing to correct this wrong attitude in the Brahmin. So here, it's not just teaching Dharma, it is the ability of the teacher to look into the student, into the audience, if you like, and to speak the Dharma which suits that situation. This is something that needs a lot of skill and experience and wisdom, of which, of course, the Buddha excels. So the Buddha knows the mind, the attitude of this Brahmin, and tells him exactly what's going on in his mind, and what is the disadvantage that he's facing by behaving himself in this negative way. In the 2nd verse, the Buddha says, but when the drive to outdo others is removed, and also the heart's lack of faith, having pushed away malice, one can indeed understand a well-spoken word. Right, so basically the Buddha is saying, I know what you're thinking, I know your state of mind, and this is not very helpful, you lack faith. So if you were to clear away this kind of mind, it will help you to understand the teaching better, to learn the Dhamma and be free from suffering. So of course the Brahmin is surprised. The Buddha knows my mind. Okay, so and that alone would inspire faith in this Brahmin. So here again we see this theme of knowing. But in this case, the Buddha knows me. The Buddha knows my mind. Another situation, of course, is when Mara appears to us, when we are being distracted, when our mind is kind of beside us, so to speak. Like this is one way of speaking of Mara. So once we say, okay, I know this is Mara, I know this is distraction, and I know this is not something helpful. In other words, you know the mind for what it is. So once you have this knowledge, Mara is routed. Mara is exposed, it goes away, and you kind of get back your mind, so to speak. So here we see this theme of knowing the mind, whether we know our own mind or not. So we can do that by identifying the mind for what it is, being honest with ourselves, and this is also called insight, the sight into our own mind. We acknowledge the mind as it is, and we start with that. So wisdom, in other words, is knowing our own mind and freeing ourselves from the negative attitudes and views that hold us back. Or the Buddha can know our mind and tell us this is what it is. And by that revelation, so to speak, we say, wow, the Buddha knows of my mind, and he's right. How come we don't notice this? So although here we see it's a kind of vicarious situation, it's as if the Buddha is actually helping us in the way he is, but it is our own effort to accept this teaching, accept this advice, and then looking into our mind and saying, yes, the Buddha is right, that this wonderful change comes to us. So this is what happens in the case of this Brahmin. Pachanika Sata. Right? So he's very happy, and the interesting thing is he doesn't actually contradict the Buddha at all, because there's nothing to contradict. That is the truth. He knows for himself. So he goes for refuge. When this was said, or when this was spoken, the Brahmin Pachanika Sata said to the Blessed One, "Wonderful Bhante." Notice he addresses the Buddha as Bhante, so it's it's quite close to the Buddha this time. "Wonderful Bhante," just as if one were to place upright what had been overturned, or were to reveal what was hidden, or were to show the way to one who was lost, or were to hold up a lamp in the dark so that those with eyes could see forms. In the same way, Master Gotama has, in numerous ways, made the Dhamma clear. I go to Master Gotama for refuge, to the Dhamma, and to the community of monks too. May Master Gotama remember me as a layman who has gone for refuge from this day forth for life. Now, of course, in the case of the Brahmins, they usually address the Buddha as Master Gotama, right? But here the word is Bhante. We have to check this whether the translation is correct, is accurate or not. But the basic idea of going for refuge is that there's this sense of joy, peace, sense of connection, and so this person is happy and says, "Well, and I know myself." Right? So this is what happens to this Brahmin, Pachanika Sata.